Good morning and welcome to another episode of On the Couch with Creatives, the show where we interview creative professionals all over the world, no matter what their industry. I'm Melanie Perry.
And I'm Julie Hyde-Mew.
And this is On the Couch with Creatives. Fans and followers of our show will know by now that we're part of the Creatives Group, the private network for creative professionals everywhere. Together, we help you to create at your best, connect you with like-minded individuals, and help you to grow your creative business. That sounds like a good idea to you and you'd like to find out more, please don't hesitate to reach out to us after the show and we would love to talk to you. But right now, it's time for On the Couch. So Julie, who do we have on the couch today?
So this On the Couch chat is for those who want to work in film or want to learn filmmaking and are thinking of going to film school. What will you be learning? What can you expect from formally studying filmmaking? And what kind of career path will you take afterwards? Well, the opportunities are limitless, as our guest today will tell you. So, LEAH Borromeo is an award-winning documentary filmmaker who is an associate lecturer at Goldsmiths College at the University of London, and she's going to tell us all about what aspiring filmmakers can expect from the curricula on offer. So let's get her on the couch. Hello, Leah. Thanks for coming on the Couch with Creatives. Nice to see you.
Great to see you, Julie, and nice to see you, Melanie. How are you doing?
Good. All the better now you're on the couch.
Well, we're going to... I know we're going to have an interesting chat today, but first of all, Leah, before we go into what film school is all about and what studying filmmaking entails, could you give us a brief overlook on, with your career, how you started and then how you became a lecturer teaching others?
I mean, it's one of those things, a kind of a marker of age, isn't it? Because I still, in my head, I still see myself as 18. So, and I'm sure there's a lot of folks out there over 40 who also do. But I started out, I guess, at college. And when I was at college, I was asked to do some work placement at the Associated Press. And then I did that for a little bit. I then started doing some overnight shifts there, doing some TV shifts with the AP, and then from there, even before graduation, I ended up working with them, and then like for a little bit around sort of Channel 4 News, and did a little bit of freelancing here and there, and then eventually just ended up taking a little role at Sky News where I met Julie as a runner. And then from then and there, a whole load of different world events happened. And then you just kind of went, I guess, up and across the ladder. Then eventually I left in 2009, went into filmmaking and started doing some more documentary work, and started doing a lot more freelance stuff. And that's where I am today. So I established a film company. I make documentaries. I have had at least one of my films long listed for an Academy Award, and then another one I was working on was shortlisted. Like this, it happened. Like I got nominated for a Grierson. So I think it just kind of it happens the more you do it. You don't really set out to go and do the thing, or at least I didn't. That's probably a character flaw. I'm completely devoid of ambition.
But it snowballs, doesn't it? But as you said, the more you do, the more doors open.
Yeah, well, it's not so much about the opening of doors, I don't think. It's just you get a bit more perspective, and it's as important to realize what you don't want to do as much as it is realizing what you do want to do. So I these days will say no more often to things instead of yes. Either because the pay is derisory or it's not non-existent, or because I just don't like the people, or I just don't like the culture, or it's not something that I want to spend my time doing. It's not an investment I want to make. So that I think that's actually quite the more important thing for me is what I say no to. But the lecturing happened. I guess I've been doing lots of guest lectures and a fair amount of teaching across everything from photography to architecture to design to journalism to filmmaking at a number of different places as a kind of guest lecturer, mostly due to the work that I already do. And then, so I'm quite used to speaking about my own work. But then I got the offer from Goldsmiths to become an associate lecturer, which is effectively about, coming in, acting a bit like a substitute teacher, but actually also working on your own modules and working on a few things. And so it's a kind of no frills, but also no strings attached way to teach. Um, I think what I'm probably going to be doing in the new year is taking on a more permanent position at Goldsmiths as either a senior lecturer or otherwise. So it that entirely depends on negotiations and workloads and whatever happens as a result of that. But I will be going further into academia, I guess. Not so much because I've always wanted to be an academic, because I actually kind of like not having spent my whole life at school. I just want to have that structure for actually being able to hone my work within an academic kind of environment. But also, one thing I found through teaching is the more interaction, the more what they call in college a contact time you have with students, the more relevant your skills become because you learn what people are actually talking about. There's a tendency when you hit a certain stage in your career to become quite fixed in your ways and to say, oh, this is how you do it. This is the process. This is what we need to do. And then occasionally I have to read a newsletter or a press gazette or journalism.co.uk and say, oh, this is the new thing because somebody has told me it's the new thing. But actually, I want to be there at the point where they're just spitballing what the new thing might be. The new thing might not even have a name yet. And that's what you find within universities and within college structures and within people who are at the beginning of their careers and the beginning of their journeys is you have that sense of like, I guess it's a vast landscape that you can fill. So if you ever play the game Sims, it's just an open sheet and you can put whatever you want to put in it. Whereas when you're my age, I guess, or anyone else's age that gets a little bit stuck in their ways, you do just that. You just get stuck in your ways. And I like being constantly challenged about that.
I imagine students can be constantly challenging, and it's not something everybody could do, I don't think. You know, when you've had a long-standing career, I think it does take a certain type of person who does enjoy teaching others and giving their knowledge to others and also receiving knowledge from others, as you've just touched on. And it's lovely that you're open to that because you say some people just aren't. They get to be the expert in their career and they're the expert and then that's it.
I think that you've definitely hit the nail on the head there. There's a difference in terms of the kind of lecturer that you get. You get the lifelong expert academic or person who's actually just quite very well informed, has a lot of books or films or everything else, or a lot of research behind them. And even though they're noted experts, they get it into their head that they're the expert, and that makes them almost immutable. Whereas my view around teaching is that you have to be squishy. You have to be malleable. You have to be prepared to look in the mirror and go, actually, I'm wrong. Or that's a better idea. Let's go that way. And so you have to be more open to that kind of knowledge. And that's how you progress, I think, is when you get that kind of, and it happens in science and it happens anywhere else. It happens in nature. When there is a kind of tension, eventually that tension will have to come to an end and it will either explode or implode. It goes in one direction or another, or sometimes it does a combination of both. But the tension isn't going to always be there. And so expertise is kind of like a tension for me. It's just this kind of way of getting yourself stuck in there, but eventually something's got to give, whether it gives in a productive way or it gives in a destructive way. That's what I want to. That's what I'm kind of experimenting with. So for me, I think teaching is also a kind of form of practice So it's not so much the outcome that I'm concerned with, but the praxis of it and the process of it. And I think a lot of my students know that I'm much more interested in their process than I am in what they end up putting out. Because I think also within academia or within a school structure, you're almost kind of, it's kind of hardwired into you that you have to pass the exam a certain way. You have to give certain answers. You have to ask certain questions in order to get certain marks. And that's not knowledge and that's not learning. That's learning how to work a system. That's part of it. But knowledge and learning is something that's a lot less rigid. Mm.
If there's one thing I know, being a journalist, TV producer myself, is that you can never rest on your laurels. You really are as good as your last story, your last program, your last film. So one's mind has to constantly expand and pick up, as you say, on current trends. So when somebody signs up for a filmmaking course at the University of London, at Goldsmiths College, what kind of learning do they get?
It's a combination because Goldsmiths is one of those places where from the outside, and it's kind of noted as one of like the top 10 universities in the UK. I think it's currently ranked at 10, which is crazy because I came out of there. And every time and most of my friends came out of there, like a good number of my friends came out of there. So I guess, yes, it is a top rated and top ranking university and institution, but that shouldn't be something that should scare you or intimidate you. It should be something that I guess is a nice to have, but shouldn't be the be all and end all of your identity and who you are. So what makes Goldsmiths great, and one of the reasons I went there as a student and I've gone back as a teacher, is the freedom. It doesn't really work very well for people who have a formulaic way of learning or discovery that they need to be rigid about. It's one of those places that historically it started as a teaching college. So way back in the 50s and 60s, it was actually a teaching college. And there's also an overwhelming kind of feminine energy because it's like for decades upon decades, there's always been a majority female population. And it's also incredibly open-minded and it's very political. It's quite queer friendly. It's, in front of every demonstration that student demonstration that I've known to have happened, Goldsmiths is right up at the front. And it's had this sort of illustrious history of having, members of Blur up to Professor Stuart Hall to, David Graeber being either attendees or lecturers and everything else, just coming through its halls. So yeah, it's a great place to be, and there's it's we've even had the royal family in there, so it's a kind of who's who of people, but it's also very free, and it's like a sandbox, and you're given a very robust theoretical background because many of the experts and many of the lecturers and many of the doctors and the professors are world-beating experts in their field. But you're also given quite a technical grounding on how to work things out. So from being a student and a teacher, um, I know that I can trust almost all of my students to do something with a certain level of competency that I probably might not be able to find in certain places. So it's, people are keen to experiment, they're keen to collaborate. And one of the best things about Goldsmiths is just this ability to say, I have an idea, but I want to collaborate with somebody who's not in my department. And someone's just going to go, sure. It's like, if you have the idea, you're given the, I guess, opportunity to mess up. And you're given the opportunity and the security to fail. And because not everything that you do will be successful, one of the things that I think is quite crucial about the Goldsmiths education is you're given the freedom to fail, but then you're also given the freedom to analyze that and look through that and then see how you can turn that failure into a win. So it's a very positive place when it comes to kind of psychosocial support and all of that.
Sounds fantastic, and I really love the way that you've touched on collaboration there as well, because there are still a lot of places that don't foster that mindset, which is insane as far as I'm concerned. It's just crazy. The best things happen when you get together with other people, not necessarily, they could be, as you say, from a totally different department, or even we've experienced, haven't we, Julie, in creatives, that actually when people who's in the same industries come together, you'd think they would be naturally competitors, but actually when two people come together, they can actually make something amazing because they understand each other, but they have different ideas, and it's that talking through different ideas, and then suddenly something goes, yeah, phew, fantastic thing comes to life, and it's amazing to watch. And so, yeah, I am all about collaboration and not competition.
But even between members who come from different creative professions, you put them in a room together and they start collaborating. It's quite fascinating. Yeah. That's when the magic happens. When I went to university and did my television course, the first thing I ever learned was how to roll up a cable. And I'll never forget, and I'm still a dab hand at it. It's these practical things, learning how to do that, learning how to work a camera, how to use lighting, all that kind of stuff. You touch on that technical stuff as well, where they learn all the nitty-gritty about all the hardware and software.
Yeah, it's important and it's essential. I mean, you can be an amazing technician but have no ideas. And one of the things I love about Goldsmiths is, yes, it will train you to be a technician, so you can be one. But they also give you the opportunity to explore your ideas. And it's always weird because when you get on LinkedIn, you get these sort of invitations like, you've been chosen to be an expert on how to do this, this, and this, and this. And the other day I got this thing about how you get people to think creatively. I'm just like, you can't teach that. It's like, creativity isn't something that you can teach, but it's something that you already innately have. But I genuinely feel it's something that is societally suppressed because we have these benchmarks that we feel like we need to hit. So by the age of 5, I should be able to do this. By the age of 12, I should be able to do this. By my first year at college, I should be able to do this. Everybody develops differently. And there are people I know who are working on their masters and they're in their 50s because they went off and had a life. And there are other people I know who are starting their masters in their 20s. So it's not a competition with anybody else. It's more about how open you are to face the things inside yourself that you would otherwise, I guess, be conditioned to avoid. And for me, I feel that creativity is one of those places where I personally go dark. I go very, very, very dark and very deep inside myself. And there's a lot of introspection and there's a lot of, I guess, doom beating that I do before I do any other projects. And out of that comes an optimism. Out of that comes this sense of hope. Out of that comes a sense of progress and practice. So it's, and one of the things that I had to learn very, very quick and very early on was the phrase practice makes perfect is flawed. What you really should be aiming for is something like practice makes progress. Because every breath that you've taken, every step that you make is something that you hadn't done 2 seconds ago. So that's something that you also have to process and take take into consideration when you're making something. And that's effectively what we try to do at Goldsmiths with students, is to grow young adults, because they are statutorily adults, who are not afraid of themselves.
But not everybody is going to become a film director or a film producer. They can start your courses and then decide they really love the whole audio sound, the audio and the sound side of things. So do you have avenues for people once they have started filmmaking courses that they decide, okay, that's not quite what I want to do. I don't want to make documentaries. I don't want to do dramas. I actually want to fiddle around with all the soundboards and the audio. Do you have that kind of freedom when people come and study there?
Absolutely. It's like you obviously come in with an idea of what you want to do and where you want to be. And at some point in my life I thought I want to be in the theater, for example, or I want to do musicals. And you do it and you suddenly discover something else and go, I'm actually more at home with this. I'd rather work in composition. So you are given the freedom to explore that. And you can discuss that with your lecturers, you can discuss that with your course conveners, you can discuss that with your head of department. It's like, if unless it's like it's hugely different. Let's say I've decided to come in on the MA filmmaking and I now suddenly want to be a mathematician. It's there is a freedom to be able to actually explore that because it's because the department that I'm in is called media communications. So it's huge. It's actually quite enormous. So it's one of the bigger sort of departments within the school. So within it, you have filmmaking, which can go down a screen documentary route. It can go down a kind of fictional drama route, or it can go down, you can go down a kind of more technical route if you want to do kind of sound design, direction, or lighting. So you can definitely explore those avenues. But then if ultimately you say, actually, I want to do something a bit hybrid, then I want to see if I can make this, as part of a more of a visual cultures thing or more of an art department thing. Always have the conversation. And everybody's always there to be able to either because the masters is actually quite an interesting thing because you come in with this idea of what you want to master, but we all know that ideas change and ideas shift. So it's how or whether or not you want to stay within that context or whether you want to work around it and see if you can change your thesis, for instance, or you can change what you want to do. So yeah, I mean it's Goldsmiths is pretty malleable. I mean, as an institution, there isn't anything very rigid. It's kind of how I view there's another college called the Royal College of Art for photography, and you'd be surprised about how many of them don't actually know how to work a camera because it's not photography isn't just about being able to take a photograph and being a technician on that. It's the message that is communicated through the lens. So that's how we kind of tend to view things at Goldsmiths. It's a little bit less rigid in the sense that not everybody who comes and does a filmmaking course has their sights set on becoming a screenwriter or a director or something else. It's filmmaking is a thing, but what do you see as filmmaking? What do you see as film? Yeah.
Do you only offer master's courses?
No, Goldsmiths is BA. It offers the whole sort of runs the whole gamut all the way up to your doctorate. So it's and then you can also do kind of teaching doctorates and all sorts of different things. So yeah, it's for any and everybody who just wants to kind of carry on with further education.
Well, let's get to the top tips part of On the Couch. What your top tips, would you give to aspiring filmmakers?
I'd study something else. Like it's good to focus on filmmaking, and it's always nice to be able to hone it in. But when I became a journalist, I never studied journalism. I've never studied filmmaking. It's something that I've picked up and I've learned along the way. Um, but it's something that was part of has always been kind of sitting on my shoulder. But it's never something I wanted to focus on specifically. I've always been interested in other things. So my first degree and only degree is English and theater. And it's always been around language and performativity, which is effectively what that is. It's English and theater arts was a joint degree. So I got 2 degrees for the price of one. And, when I do work these days, even as a journalist and especially as a filmmaker, I always think about language, the semiotics of language, the signs and the symbols around it, and performativity, how things are presented, how things come across, how those symbols and that semiotic language comes across, what the future might lie in whatever I say. because you'll have kind of consequences and reactions to everything that you create, for instance. So that's pretty much part of studying language and you know performativity, I guess, is what. So
Interesting you say that. I was going to pick up on that because we had somebody on the couch, oh, yonks and yonks and yonks ago. I can't remember who it was now. And they were talking about learning filmmaking. There's a lot of people filmmakers, young filmmakers, you've got to study at school, you've got to go to university and you learn the art of filmmaking. And somebody was saying, but doesn't that stifle creativity in the filmmaking world? Because if you're taught it in a formulaic way, you do this, you do this, you do this, isn't that not necessarily a good thing? Somebody who brings a completely fresh look to the table, who has picked up things as they've gone along, but have got their knowledge from learning other things, might make a much better piece than somebody who's just gone through the motions at college and come out with a piece of paper at the other end.
I mean, some of the most interesting students that I have are people who study creative writing and then are working their way into film, or people who are studying business studies. I have a business studies student who has gone into film. I have a anthropology student who's gone into film, and it's being interested in something else. It's you can by all means please study filmmaking if you really feel like you need to have a basis or a grounding or a focus on that track of your study and that track of your path. Or if you feel like having an MA in filmmaking is going to help you with that, because it's great to be disciplined and to have a lot of these structures in place so that you understand the language, you understand the background, or you're given a kind of, what I like to kind of call the MA is not so much a kind of like masters in terms of how to master something, but it's a really good short 1 year or 2 year way for somebody to get like a lifetime of knowledge in a short space of time. And if anybody's ever been tempted to do a driving course and do it in a week, this is kind of what it is. It's intensive, and there's a lot. They ask a lot of you, but also you will get so much out of it because you are given not only the freedom and the space to be able to kind of do all of this stuff within that, I guess, safety net, but also to be able to do it with the guidance of people who have done it who do it day in and day out for so many years and for so many decades. So you have the benefit of everybody who comes in with years and decades of expertise and experience, but also you can fail. Like you can fail. You're allowed to fail, which you're not really, within a career setting, for instance, it might be kind of hit and miss. Some people might not want you or might not give you the freedom to do that. Whereas a place like Goldsmiths, well, they will encourage you to do that because it's like you don't learn how to ride a bike without falling off. You don't learn how to swim without floundering around for a little bit. So this is kind of, this is what we offer you the space to do is to flounder and to fall.
Okay, so your first tip is study something else before you study filmmaking.
I just be interested in other things, like just literally, because otherwise, I guess, if you aren't interested in other things, why should people be interested in what you're doing? Thank you.
And tip two?
Ooh, that goes into, again, to another interest part. It's not so much about being, I guess, everybody's kind of concerned with, especially when you go into a school, about how you can be either innovative, interesting, new, or chasing this unicorn of being this, I don't know, enfant terrible or some sort of genius or anything else of that nature. The main thing for me is just to stick to what you know and stick to what you are. So, one of the questions I like asking is something like, "Where are you really from? Where are you from?" I said, "Where are you really from?" And as a person of color, I'm asked this often. then it's usually followed with, "Oh, you speak really good English." But it's, but the other thing is for me, it's really kind of seriously and without abandon looking at who you are and being able to not be scared to look in that mirror and to acknowledge the times that you've been awkward, to acknowledge the times that you've said some crappy things, acknowledge the times you have not been your best self and directly address that. So it's always to kind of write letters to your past self because it is still yourself. So yeah, it's just being able to, apologies, be honest with yourself and to yourself when you are making something, and not to be overly concerned about what everybody else is doing.
And your third, do you have a third top tip?
Hydrate. Always drink water. There are so many people who are utterly and completely dehydrated and like energy wise in terms of the actual water, but I also mean that in a slightly kind of more conceptual way. It's don't just produce stuff to go out. Take time to fill yourself up with things that you want to fill you. So it's always about nourishment. So, actually, yes, drink water. To actually, yes, watch other people's films, read other books, listen to podcasts, go to something that you would otherwise not have gone to before. Figure out, one of my favorite hobbies used to be just to hop on a random London bus and then just take it to the very end and see where you go. Or just, set a timer and then get off after 30 minutes, no matter where you are. And just sit in a cafe, figure out what you want to do, talk to a new person. But always just find a way of filling yourself as well as spitting things out. Because it's not all about what you produce. It's also about, how are you going to nourish yourself?
Wow, such words of wisdom. I can imagine your students just drink in everything you say.
I make them drink. There's definitely. No, I not alcohol. No, but I always start like particularly like my longer lectures that are sort of from 11 till 4. We'll usually start with going to the coffee shop. So once everyone's in, we get up and we get out and we take a walk and we have a chat and we get everything out at that time with each other. We catch up. We do other, we talk about all sorts of things. And so by the time we all have our coffees and our teas and our waters or whatever, we get back into the class and all of those sillies are shaken out. Everything that you want to do is then you're actually ready to focus on what you want to do. And it's a good 20-25 minutes, but it's a good way of actually just building a sense of self and community.
Yeah. Wow.
And that's very clever, actually, because when you are in the world of filmmaking, you always work, well, not always, you can do it all on your own, but basically you mostly with a crew. And the way you interact with your crew has a huge impact on your product.
Yeah, 100%. And it's, there's a lot of people, I guess, within Goldsmiths or in this particular track of study that are what I would call ambivert. So they're not quite extrovert, but they're also not quite introvert. They're just little bit of everything. And, I'd count myself in that in the sense that whenever I've been putting a lot of myself out, I will need some time and some space just to myself to read a book, to listen to something, to play a game, or to do some crafting, like, or anything like that, just so I can recharge. Because I think there's a lot of energy, like mental and physical energy, that's actually spent when you are in that situation, especially when you're in a crew situation and you're completely unaware of it. Right. You're just going and going and going and going and going, and you don't really notice until you stop. And once you've stopped, it's like, whoa. And so, everybody kind of can possibly kind of deal with this idea of like once you've wrapped up a shoot or once you've finished a story or once it's out and published in the world, unless you've got something to immediately jump onto, you are going to just have this shock of like, woof, okay, I was traveling pretty quick. And So unless you're just constantly going and constantly keeping in motion, which by the way is not sustainable, but it's, you're not really going to give yourself the opportunity to be good to yourself. And that's the most important thing you can do, is to be good to yourself.
Absolutely. And I can relate to that because I'm exactly the same. I can be full on charge, but if I'm around people, I love people and I love being around people and I love high energy situations, but then I do have to take 2 or 3 days to just be really quiet and do my own thing. Because if I don't get that, I get incredibly irritable.
I think most people are introverted extroverts or extroverted introverts. We all need it. You all need that balance. Well, now we're going to talk about what's going on inside your head, Leah. So Melanie has these values jam cards, and you're going to pick a card with a value on it, and then she's going to ask you some questions. Please just keep it to one word or one sentence, the first thing that jumps into your mind.
It's not scary.
It's not scary, even if it's totally ridiculous. Just say it. If you say, "Oh yeah, marshmallows," say it. Okay?
This is the on the couch part of on the couch. So all your students are going to get inside your head now, Leah, and see what you're really on about. Okay, I'm going to run my finger along the cards and just yell stop when you want me to stop.
Just stop. Yeah, just there.
Let me see what you picked. Let me see. Oh, this is a very good one, I think, for a university lecturer. You picked.
You can't see that.
Right, so closer to yourself.
Entrepreneurship.
Oh,
Entrepreneurship. Wow. Okay.
How to make money isn't
any. We're going to ask you creatively about entrepreneurship. Okay, first up, Leah, what does entrepreneurship mean to you? If it has a physical look, if you could physically see it, what would it look like to you?
Repeat the question, please.
If you could see it physically, if entrepreneurship had a physical form, what would it look like to you?
Pokemon.
The bogeyman.
Pokemon.
Interesting. And what would it feel like?
Squishy and fluffy.
If it had a sound, what would it sound like?
Yeah.
Oh, meep. I like that. And if it had a smell, what would it smell like?
Fire retardant.
Fire retardant. I've not smelled that, Leah. What are you trying to tell us?
But it's the smell that you get. It's a new car smell.
You can't smell. Yeah. I love that.
Leah, it's been lovely talking to you on the couch. Thank you so much for giving us some of your very precious time. We really appreciate it. It's been fascinating listening to you.
It really, really has. I've thoroughly enjoyed myself. Thank you so much. I will let you get back on with your day and with your lovely students. And thank you everybody for tuning in. And until next time, we'll see you.